What is up, everyone, and welcome to episode 46 of Pull Up with Miles and Owen. And today, we welcome an absolute legend in the women's sports space, the founder of Highlighter, now working at ESPN and Anscape, and also just one of the nicest, most genuine, and supportive people in this space. We are honored to have Ari Chambers join the show. Ari, thank you for pulling up with us. How's it going?
Owen, first of all, thank you for being one of literally the only people on earth that pronounces highlighter right. I made it so that it would read highlighter and not highlight her, and so thank you. Thank
That's
you.
that's all Miles. That I got to give the assist
Okay,
to
Miles,
my podcast partner here.
MVP for real, MVP phonetics partner. Okay, period.
That third H is silent.
It is. Thank you. You get me.
Well, perfect place to start because so much of your passion really just bleeds through and makes sports, especially women's sports, accessible. So where did your own passion in the space originate?
I always like to give back to things that poured into me. I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina. I was privileged enough to grow up and see women in high places, in the highest places in the sports space growing up, whether that be Coach K. Yao or down the street, Sylvia Hatchell, and my cheer gym owner, Kathy Bucky. So, like, I have always been super indebted to the game. And then being able to be alongside, like, my best friends who ended up playing great AAU teams, and so that's a lot of familiarity I have with the players. But anyway, to say all that, I bring it back and I land it to I'm giving back to a game that gave so much to me in my developmental years, that showed me or was a direct reflection of how women in places can sit at the most powerful seat and be very impactful and effective.
I want to get back to the journey, but I'm just gonna insert here and ask you how you're feeling about NC State, because I gotta say, South Carolina beat NC State on Sunday, but impressive performances. I feel like a lot to be excited about with the Wolfpack. Where are
Well,
you at?
on behalf of NC State, I know that they weren't happy with that performance. I know that they have more to give. And it's like a lot of people look at South Carolina as the dynasty they are and are like, well, at least we held our own for 2 quarters, 3 quarters. But I know that NC State has more to give. They have a lot of work to do in their post presence. They have a young team. So I was really impressed with Zam and how she showed out. I love her and Sanaya working together. I think that Sanaya has really assumed a role, though she was in foul trouble in the first half. She assumed a role of a leader on that team, and so she's really finding her own. That's not easy to play against your former team either. And then Isaiah James, there's just so many pieces to NC State that we can see more from, and that I know that they're going to perform more the rest of the season. Go Pack!
Go Pack.
Yeah.
So back to the journey. So when was there like a point where you felt that you wanted to pour back into this space and just women's sports as a whole, and it felt feasible that I can actually do this as a career and I want to do this?
I never question feasibility when something's placed on my heart. When I was in high school, I was who's in journalism. I was the newspaper editor, the yearbook editor, and I always intentionally only lent my talents to write and format the pages to women's sports. So I knew that was in me. But honestly, candidly, going into college, I was a model, I was a cheerleader. So, like, I didn't, the whole journalism thing, I just kind of put in the back burner because I was a professional model most of my 20s. But I would say it's funny, the transition into the W in a real space was through cheerleading, and it's because I watched Alyssa Thomas. I was really close with her people back in 2014. I watched Alyssa Thomas, Connecticut Sun, play at New York Liberty in 2014. I was like, oh my God, they have cheerleaders. I could be one of them. And I wrote to the entertainment director and ended up being in it and saw the media discrepancy. That's where it really stemmed from, of knowing that, okay, this has always been placed on my heart growing up. I've always been a writer. I've always been somebody who loves sports. Like, I don't know how people live life without sports. It's just confusing. What do you do? So just being like engulfed in sports and having a lot of friends that played in the league, I just couldn't understand why nobody wanted to talk about them or talk to them. And so I'm witnessing, because I did the Knicks, the Rangers, and the Liberty. So I'm witnessing these three very different leagues in the same arena at the time, not getting coverage. So it didn't make sense to me why people didn't want to talk to my friends. Like that's where it started.
I love that it can be something that small or that, I mean, it's significant,
That's
but
simple,
that
right?
anything.
You layer all the strategy. Sometimes if you see something that is a blank space and you are like, why doesn't this happen? We don't realize that it's well within our capacity to do it. I knew that I have always been vocal. Even before there was Instagram and things, I was always on Facebook. That was back when, you know, you got the little invites and whatever, you could barely caption things, but I was always documenting everything. And so just being able to apply that to fill the discrepancy that was there independently, I think that I had the benefit of being independent first. And then I got my first writing job with it was the Summit Hoops back then. It's now the Next. But just being awarded the opportunity to be able to work with people who have been in this industry for a while. And I was fortunate enough to position myself to form great relationships with them. And they gave me the ins and outs. And I think that a lot of times the people who have been doing the work for decades are overlooked by the trajectory right now. But I am forever indebted to them for ushering me through this space that wasn't even created so that I can make an impact.
There's so much there that I want to follow up on because that's something that, first of all, as independents in this space really resonates with both me and Owen because yes, the money might not be there, but what is there is the freedom to cover the league in a way that it's not necessarily being covered, or to be able to bring your own lens in a way that you might not be able to if you're under a larger publication. But there's also what you kind of talked about where there's an oversaturation in so many men's sports where just everything that possibly every angle that can be looked at already has been, or that there's already this like hive mind in place because there are so many people that are just saying the same thing over and over. Whereas the W is, and women's sports largely are still somewhat of this uncharted territory because there just haven't been that many voices in the space and there haven't been that many stories told. So it feels like that's something that you have done really well is gotten into ahead of the curve on just the social media space. And it's something that I think women's sports, that might be why at the collegiate level, across the board, women's sports athletes are making their names known more than a
Mhm.
lot of men's sports athletes. And it's because that it seems like they're engaging with that social media space. So could you talk a little bit about that and also your catchphrase, the WNBA is so important. I feel like it's
Yeah,
a big part of
I'm
that
going
as
to
well
three
too.
different three different facets of what you said. Going back to the independent journalist, I would encourage everybody out there that wants to talk about sports to talk about sports, whether that's women's sports, men's sports, whatever you feel compelled to talk about, whether that's X's and O's or the culture. People see the ESPN and the highlighter of the world, and they don't realize that it took 10 years to build, right? So, like, as I have the backing of big networks now, my first, I want to say, 5 years, I was crowdfunding. So don't be shameful of like if it weren't for Corey Close or Pretty Wiki Woo on Twitter, like if it weren't for people who believed in me because of my repetition and my innovation in the social space, because I didn't choose social. I'm a traditional reporter. So like social media was the only way I could get my point across. So use what you have. Don't be embarrassed for asking for help and see where it takes you. Let your passion lead you. And I got lucky the fact that social media blew up the way it did. Because when I first started on social media, I was a PR's worst nightmare because they didn't understand social media, right? They didn't understand. This was before teams had team team social media. So it was press releases, and I'm over here making Twitter posts. You know, it didn't make sense to them. But trust your innovation, trust that process. And as far as collegiate athletes or even youth athletes utilizing social media, they get it. They get that they don't have to wait for that major backing. They don't have to wait for um, so many tools to tell their stories. If they want to break their own stories, now that they have the following to do that. Now they have the agency to do that. They have the audacity to do that. They have the resources to do it because all you need is your phone now. We didn't have TikTok back then, right? We didn't even have Instagram back then. We started with Facebook and Twitter. It grew into Instagram. Now it's gone into TikTok and who knows what else. But the collegiate athletes in particular, they understand now they make money. So their social media or their income is contingent on how they present themselves on social media and how big they can grow their brand. But also they know that like they're opening up a space where people can give them feedback, whether they want it or not. So they're able to take criticism in mass. They're able to be able to manage their celebrity in a way we haven't seen before. And yeah, and as far as the WNBA is so important, again, you don't have to over strategize everything. Before it was a tweet, I put it on Facebook and I was like, Swing Cash was singing to the junior NBA camp, and it was all girls, and she was singing, if you want to be somebody, if you want to go somewhere, you better wake up and pay attention. And I thought that was special, and I just called it what it is. It doesn't have to be this, how can we appeal to the masses? It's just sometimes you just say, hey, this is what I see, and this is what comes to mind. Not worrying about language, not worrying about a super thought out answer. It's just like, oh, this was important. The WNBA is so important. And then it was able to, again, luck, apply that to a lot of other situations.
I do think that that's the appeal too, because it's just this organic thing that you said once, and then that just resonated. And I just wanted to shout out the United crew member that passed you the sign. I saw that on social media.
So let me tell you about that story, Miles. So I'm on United, right? So like I fly literally 4 times a week. Like it is what it is. So I'm sitting there and he's like, would you like any beverages for the flight? Because they take your order beforehand. I was like, no, I'm good. Then I was like, you know what? I'll take a half a glass of water because I have the bladder of a 2-year-old, right? So I was like, I'll take a half a glass, but I didn't touch it. And so when they were trying to collect the glasses, he was like, no, I'm not coming back until you drink it all. And I was like, why is this man worried about my hydration? Come to find out, he knew all about me. And he was like, no, she's not going to be dehydrated on my flight. Anyway, so when I finished it, he passed me the card. The WNBA is so important. So it made more sense why he had a personal connection there. But I was like, dang, this flight attendant's really worried about my health. But it was very funny, very cute, very nice.
I love that. We want to get back to a couple broader, W questions, but first I wanted to touch on, a already emerging theme of this conversation, which is how would you give advice to maybe people trying to break into this space about trying to maintain the passion and being able to pour that into their work? Because I think a lot of people find the tricky elements of this industry very like influencing in their work where it's like, okay, I have to do this to get clicks or do, X, Y, or Z. Like, and what is so inspiring, I think, about your work, among many things, is that passion is so evident. It's just baked into everything you do is the supportiveness of women's sports and these athletes in general. So what would your advice be to someone who might be on that line of like, oh, I do feel passionate about this, but also there's so many things that might lead me to feel like I have to sell out in some sort of way?
Mm-hmm. So this is multi-layered too, right? You mentioned you feel the passion for my content. It's because I actually care. You don't burn out from care. Right? You don't burn out from care. You burn out from extraneous situations and expectations not being met. So I would peel it back and ask, what is my why? Right? Is my why, do I want to be a celebrity or do I want to push these stories? So I've always centered myself in, if this vanity wasn't here, and you can ask anybody that works with me, I do not care about the vanity of the position. I care about telling stories that aren't told. I care about these athletes and I care about pushing the women's game forward. All the extraness is a direct product of me remaining close to my why. So when you enter this space, what do you want out of it? Have those expectations for yourself. What I do every January 1st, call me cliche, I have a vision board, right? And I write all my goals. I do 4 different categories and then write a note to myself as it already happened. And that keeps me in alignment instead of looking to the next person saying, oh, they have this, why didn't I get here? Or, oh, this situation happened for them. Oh, I'm so tired of working and nothing's coming to me. If you stay centered in that passion, in that mission, not only will it reflect in your work and it will be easier to maintain, but you won't have false expectations of what you think you should and shouldn't have. At the end of the day, I think that journalism is service work. That's how I approach my journalism, whether that's serving, telling the story, whether that's, in my case, serving, being a voice for the players. It's service work. So you're not going to approach it with the expectation of things that I think we can get caught up in right now because of the women's sports trajectory. If you just recenter yourself in your passion and you pour from your saucer, not your cup should always be full. You pour from the excess, then you should know, hey, I'm not going to burn out because I'm centered in what I want to do.
Damn. I gotta let that sit for a second. I'm about to make my vision board for 2025.
We are gonna do a vision board party. I'm so serious. Everybody thinks that it's so ridiculous, but I'm telling you, I have had a vision board every single year for the past, I can't even remember how long. The only thing that has not come into fruition is an Emmy, and I just haven't been positioned to get that. But I'm telling you, if you see it for yourself, if you write it down, if it's placed on your heart, and you can actually write it as if it already happened, you know the exact steps that it will take to make it happen.
I love this. The Emmy's on the way.
Emmy's on the way.
Come on.
I think our problem is that when we have these conversations, we're always like a half dozen drinks in. And then
I would have been drunk off coffee, but I would enjoy y'all.
But it's true. I mean, this podcast originated with us sitting in a bar a couple of blocks away from the Barclays Center where we often go after games, and just sitting there on the back of a piece of paper writing out potential names and potential guests, and all of that all happened because if we hadn't put that on paper, we would have forgotten it like the rest of our conversations that normally happen at 1 o'clock in the morning. But it's true, and I know that Owen's got some more W questions, and I do too, but I do have questions I want to circle back to just about some of those goals from this year, because you've done, even in the last calendar year, some really impressive stuff. And one that I want to bring out now is the work with AU last winter, where you sat in that analyst chair. And I think it's also working alongside an absolute pro in Brendan Glasheen, who our friend Tarika, multi-time friend on this pod too, has told us that Brendan is just such a great teammate. But it was just so cool to hear you in a new space. What was the behind the scenes preparation like? Because that is so different from, that's what I always hear, is so different from basically anything else journalistically that you can do to prepare for a moment like that. Double no less.
Going back to what Owen said about avoiding burnout, if you continue to be a student of things and you continue to learn, it will pour into you, it will fuel you, because you'll never be satisfied, and it won't be a sense of exhaustion running like you're going nowhere. You're going places because you're expanding. Athletes Unlimited contacted me. I was actually supposed to just do sideline, which I hadn't done since 2017, actually. But I was supposed to just do sideline. Then Cheryl had to be out, so I filled in for her in the analyst seat. Now, if you know anything about me, I'm a special features girl. I love long form sit downs, and I am also one who's really big on control. So as you all saw me step in front of the camera into these new positions that I hadn't done in so long, especially for a sport that I did not play, it was really challenging. And to be so forward facing, I'm faced with public opinion, and I saw everything. And what somebody close to me said to me is like, look, you got to give yourself more grace, because everybody in the world is watching you practice. Everybody in the world is watching you be this beginner level students. You just have the opportunity to step into these places because people bank on your preparedness. If I did not have Brendan there, I don't know where I would have been mentally. He is so amazing with being able to toss to you at the right times. He knows me personally, so my strengths, he knew when to play into them. He would not set me up for failure, where I can say in the past, I have been set up by my play-by-play in a way that was like, I gotcha. And Brendan never has the I gotcha moment. And if anybody learns anything from him outside of his professionalism in the space and his skill set with play-by-play, because play-by-play is literally such a hard job, just his willingness to open up the door for me to sit next to him and win, succeed. Now, did I give myself a C the entire time? Absolutely. I just didn't think I had an A performance, but without him, I wouldn't have been in that level. And the preparedness from it, I watched a lot of film. I have it's called boards. I don't know if the general public is familiar with it, where you have notes that you can easily reference during the game. But what I think a lot of people's biggest mistake, and I'm guilty of this too, is trying to be somebody you're not. I'm never going to be able to break down the game like, say, an Andrea Carter. But what I bring is because generational talent, they were really better. She is so good. But what I bring is I know these players well. And so I had to tap into my skill sets, and I had a play-by-play who knew that about me and was able to say, hey, we don't need you to break this down. We need you to tell me why she's acting like this, or why she's moving like this, or what happened with her. And so it's getting good chemistry with your play-by-play. It's being able to be in a position to set up to win because you're prepared, over prepared. Because if people know you for something else, they're going to expect that level of excellence from you in a different role because they don't know how different muscles work. And this year has been such a year of challenging myself instead of being in the innovation space and entrepreneurial space in these siloed jobs that I've been able to book. I've been blessed to sit in. But it's definitely a muscle that I'm working, and I want to continue to get better because people like Brendan deserve that W for opening the door.
Yeah,
Totally.
Sorry, Owen, I've got to follow up, and I'm gonna kick you out of the way.
I'm like,
Real quick, because we are spoiled here in New York, where we have Monica on the radio for a lot of these Knicks games, and so much of what you're saying is kind of resonating, where she has talked about the importance of the teamwork in the booth aspect because it's such tight windows. When you talk about all the prep, it's like you're prepping for what has happened, not what can happen, because everything is just up in the air right in front of you and you're reacting. And there's only so much that you can do. But with your background in storytelling, I feel like that's the challenge that I would think is maybe the biggest thing is those tight windows where you've got 15 seconds to squeeze in an anecdote. What is there any prep that you can do for that outside of just like on the fly watching action happen and be like, oh no, we can't fall behind, or do you wait for a stoppage? What was that like for you?
So as far as when the game goes, if I'm in the analyst seat, the best advice I can give to people and the best advice that resonates with me is just talk about what's going on in the game. If there are there are duller moments or moments where we can talk about somebody, that's when you pull in those tidbits, right? So like, I'm not going to tell you about such and such's family if it's like in the middle of a play and there's things to talk about. So what I love about Monica and what I love about working with Monica, because we do a lot of studio together, is that we're able to vibe and we're just talking. I think the best broadcasters are able to meet you where you are, tell you what's going on in the game, not do too much. I don't know if y'all know this about me. Y'all should, because I don't ever do too much. I don't speak just to speak, right? I talk about what I need to talk about, and then I'm quiet. You have nothing to prove to anybody, right? So like in general, as an analyst, you don't have to prove yourself. What you're doing, remove yourself from it. Talk about the game. Talk about the players. To keep it succinct, what just happened in this play, break it down. If you don't have that, if I don't have the knowledge to think about that, being like, oh no, this player, her speed, she has a history like Courtney Williams, history in track and field. That's why she's able to elevate. That's why she's able to shoot over such and such defender. It's ability to retrieve information from those backstories and apply it to basketball very quickly.
I'm so glad you said that. Miles hears my complaints all the time. I feel like it's an epidemic in sports media where it's like so many people just want to hear themselves talk. And I'm constantly like, if you have something to say, then that's wonderful. And if you don't, then it's okay to listen. Like listening is a bit of a lost art. So I love that you highlighted that. And kind of along that same trail, I mean, it's been so exciting to see you in the studio among all these other prolific talents. What have been some of the challenges, some of the exciting elements in that regard?
It's funny because we're all friends, the ones who work on the W side of ESPN. So a lot of times we have the same thoughts. I don't know if you've ever seen when it's like three of us on there and I'm like, dang, I ain't got nothing else to say. And I'll say it. I'm like, I have nothing additive. But the biggest challenge is we all think similarly. In my challenge personally, I approached studio because my first studio show I think was with ABC, which is wild. And I had 24 hours in advance notice, which is even crazier. But I have had trouble tapping into what makes me special because I was trying to be somebody that I wasn't. And just that general perspective of that, bringing it back to, Ari, why are you here? You're hired because of you. You're not hired to give a technical breakdown of film. You're hired to do, Ari. And that's why I've been stressing this entire like conversation we've had. If you just stick to what makes you special and what makes you unique in an oversaturated space, that you can't be replicated, and you add value. I add value by being myself. So the second I try to step outside of that, it's not gonna add to the show. So like for studio, my challenge was timing with live TV, like Miles mentioned. My other struggles were thinking the same ideas as others and not being able to have the confidence to speak on something original. But I've worked on all of it. I've worked on all of it, and my sisters, who I have the privilege of working with, are just like Brendan. They know my strengths, and that's a privilege to have people that know your strengths, and they toss it to me in a way that makes my life easier. And I can't wait till I'm in a position where there's somebody new who comes in and I'm able to help facilitate that, because it really is a family. And I think that we benefit so much when we can work together in this. And that's why I don't think that additive talk during broadcasts are beneficial, because it's almost, it comes from a place of ego. And I think that when you come from a place of ego, nothing is accomplished. And also in the same breath, coming from a place of lack of confidence, it doesn't nobody any benefit either. So I'm trying to find the balance of being confident while taking on these new roles, having all this information about player backstories and fitting them into a live slot, and just embracing the fact that I'm a student of this journey that I've been placed in.
I'm going to be listening back to this when we make our vision boards together.
You accountable. Now that you know the vision board is the way, it's the way.
This is absolutely what I had to hear. And there was I had an interesting moment in the days after the Liberty won the title last month, where there were a lot of people who, I've been a Liberty beat reporter since 2020. So there were a lot of people in my world outside of the W space who were congratulating me on their accomplishments, just knowing how much time I'd spent. And like you said earlier, you go back to the MSG days with the Liberty and the Knicks and the Rangers. And something that I've said is, like, in this space, the longer I'm in it, the more that like tendrils kind of spread out. So you've got, people, you've built relationships with players on every team, and with coaches and agents, and all have all these conversations. How do you reconcile, because you talk so much about kind of just being yourself, how do you reconcile your fandom and support with being a professional, with being objective? Although I know that a lot of it is kind of, we're in a position where we are rooting for like everybody to win all the time, and that's just not how sports work.
Mm-hmm. I am not objective. My journalism isn't objective, but I call it how it is, right? So like, I didn't have okay. So we were in the green room before the game 5, and I was like, I don't have a dog in this fight. And LaChana was like, you absolutely do. Like, you literally come to this conversation. But I guess because I love Courtney. I love, like, you know what I mean? It was very kind of neutral for me. And I've never been a super fanatic of anything outside of like the Sparks growing up. So like, when it comes to my work, I don't let anything be distracting. So I talk about the game. I see the game and call it how it is. Monica does the same. She's very New York leaning, but she calls the game how it is. So if the information doesn't align with the reality of what's happening, it's insincere and it's just not good journalism. But I think that enthusiasm behind things lends to a better product. Game 1, when I was sidelined, like, yeah, I came from the Liberty organization, but I'm really close with Rye. So like, now what? So it's just like, it's never really super heavily slanted one way or the other because of the relationships I have. So I have to just keep it to basketball.
That's so relatable to me and good to hear, because like I struggle with this constantly, where I have the traditional journalism background of like going to journalism school, writing for newspapers. But like anyone who follows me on Twitter knows that like if Jackie Young's playing, I'm not objective in this scenario. It's like just there's certain players, and you don't have to be, and like accepting that and understanding that can actually produce in many different arenas like my best work is really helpful. I wanted to bring it back to the W as a whole here because we were talking so much about journalism and kind of our side of this space in this league, but the W as a whole is just growing at a rapid pace, and we've seen foundational growth year after year, and then this kind of explosion in the past couple of years. And I would just love to get your take anywhere you want to take it of how you would describe the growth of the last decade of the W and kind of where we're going and what sticks out to you about kind of this very critical juncture that the league is at right now.
The last decade's been rough. The past 4 years have been great.
Yeah.
It started when Sabrina was like, "Why isn't my draft going to be on the ESPN main?" There's literally nothing. So I think that COVID helped put women's sports on network television in an accessible network way. When everybody had to sit down in front of a screen instead of in front of people, that helped too, because people were able to consume the product in a way they hadn't before. Then the general enthusiasm around women's college, because we had been deprived of a college tournament and we saw what we were missing. And then we have like these younger athletes growing up on social media, so they see what they can become. It's very far removed from the way they don't see role models. They see the other role models and they want to perform for their social media. So they're going to be in there training so they can be shifty, so they can get their highlights posted on whatever platform. It's been growing because this generation has never had to live without a WNBA. They never had to live with limits. They never had to worry about what it was like if they didn't make it, because they know it's a sustainable career now. There's give and take with player profitability and showing that them playing pro is actually a sustainable career. There's I kept using audacity, but that's the only word that comes to me. There's audacity in the player's perspective, saying we don't have to stand for what we've been able to stand for. 2021, when Sedona said like, "Hey, this is unacceptable." I can't see, back when I was in college, like 2009, like I can't see us being like, "This is unacceptable," because we didn't know the strength of Title IX. Again, we're 50 years into Title IX, 50 something years into Title IX, and so now it's like, no, we demand it, because that's just, first of all, it's the law. Second of all, there's no reason why you keep up this in a suppressed way. Like, there's no reason why we are of the oppressed, because the product is good and it can make money. And so what I'm excited with the W is showing that it's profitable. There's a good translation now and good following from college to W season. What I'm weary of with a lot of great splashes, it's just that. And so where there's a big wave, there's a recession. So I don't want the recession to happen. I don't want NIL to be so out of control that it only benefits college football, that's a podcast for a different day. But I was on Capitol Hill in February talking to Congress about how NIL regulation is important, because it's impacting everything that is not college football. Sustainability is what I'm looking out for. I'm very optimistic about the interest. I am very weary of continued investment.
I think that's a really great point, especially as there are rumors about the next TV deal. Nothing has been finalized yet. We're on the doorstep of what will hopefully be a historic CBA that will be negotiated over the next year. But yeah, that pipeline from college to pro is something we've talked about a lot on this podcast, where there were decades of, it felt like the league was just basically saying, we are at the top of the mountain. You should be interested in us just because we have the top talent, and didn't really make those efforts to make the connections to college players, or having the WNBL from Australia on League Pass last year, having Athletes Unlimited on League Pass. Very interested to see what happens with Unrivaled, and Unrivaled having their own separate TV deal as well. All of that, it just creates this greater universe outside of just the confines of, May to October. And that's why I love when I see you go to NBA All-Star and ask those athletes.
It's like my favorite thing to do, and be like, "Hey, so about the W," and all the players get so annoyed, but they know it's coming now. Like, it's what I've been doing it since 2019, since Charlotte. So it is what it is. But I do want to say, though, I think that we who have been on before the new wave, I challenge us as consumers of the game when looking at the WNBA and our complaints to the league itself, especially within marketing. Ask yourself, have you actually looked to see if your inherent bias is true? Because I know a lot of times we were like, why didn't we get this? Or why isn't this player being promoted? But I literally look at the complaints on Twitter and I'm like, this was just posted. Or like this series was just aired. Like I want us to be better about, instead of like knee-jerk reactions, blaming things, like consume the content that exists so there can be more of it. If there are complaints about players not being shown, look at who is being shown and see that there is more balance than what our inherent internal bias is lending us to believe. Like, I remember one time, like they were like, "Why is this person not being promoted?" And I literally just opened League Pass. I was like, the first episode was this person. And I was like, it's not making sense to me, because at some point we have to look and say, "Hey, what is the scope that the productivity can continue to go up if we're not even consuming what's there?" And I'm not saying let the foot off the gas on the expectation. Obviously, that needs to be up here, because the game is up here. But we need to really, really take a long look at ourselves in the mirror as native WNBA fans and saying, are the resources that we're asking for, do they exist already? And in what way can we be consumers of it so that we can prove in a business way, not an emotional way, in a business way, that these are essential going forward?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I feel that too, because then that just leads the way to more coverage. Like that leads the way to more investment through the consumption of that great work that is already being produced. And I'm guilty of that too, that inherent kind of, oh, we're not talking about this. It's like, oh, wait, well, actually, if I actually pause and take a breath and look for it, there is this. And then that's
there's so much content that I know people have been saying, because I see the numbers, because I'm strange like that, because I've managed things. Like I don't manage the WNBA things, but I'm used to checking numbers, and I'm like, okay, well, y'all are asking for this, but there's only 900 people that have watched it, and it has been promoted. Here's the graphic for it. It's just choosing to ignore it. Like, and that's honestly discouraging to people who are working hard on it too. So like, I just think there needs to be a little bit of give and take with knee-jerk reactions and emotionally led and emotionally charged demands versus what is the reality of the situation.
I mean, it's also understanding that like you say the last decade has been rough, but the turnaround came 4 years ago. I remember right before the pandemic when I would go into bars and ask them to put on a W game, and they would say what channel, and I didn't have an answer for them because the games weren't on TV, and these bars were not all at the time connected to streaming apps or anything that they could work toward. So yes, like we also would love pre and post game shows for everything. But
we're trying.
There has been a ton of progress even in the last couple of years, and these stories are being told, and sometimes digitally. Sometimes you have to find the channel, but that's better than there not being a channel.
No, Miles, here's a hot take from me. All you have to do is type in the team name. New York Liberty versus Atlanta Dream. Google has it. There's a partnership with Google. It will tell you. It's not like all my life I had to fight. No, you just type in the team names. Same way you would do it with the college game. Same way you would do it. And on League Pass, if you just click games, it's there. And so like, I just don't understand. Like maybe I'm just too black and white about things, or just like understand like businesses, but I'm just like, literally, if I want to find something, I'm just going to Google it. It's not like it was in 2014 because it didn't exist. The reason why it was so hard to find is because it wasn't on TV. Yeah. These are on TV. These are on League Pass. Like you can find them.
This makes me so happy because, as Miles can attest, I am like such an analog person. I'm ashamed to my generation. I do not understand technology. So I'll type in, I'm a huge tennis fan. I'll just type in like tennis scores and hope I can like find the tennis scores. So there you go. This is perfect for me.
I promise you, it's the first thing that pops up on Google. Like we have, like the league has a sponsorship with Google. It's they see what we're searching. So I promise you, if you just type in the team names, it's right there. The first thing at the top there. But just imagine if people demanded, which they can. Again, this is free reign for demands. But imagine if they're like, NBA, why aren't you telling us where things are? You know how you know? Because of Google. You know how you know? Because you go to the TV guide. Like, like.
It's there. It's there.
we wanted to close with kind of on a fun note because these are such important, lofty conversations. But I wanted to ask you just on a more fun note, like what's one of or some of the coolest interactions that have kind of made you pinch yourself in this space where you're just like, wow, I can't believe I'm getting to talk to this person or do this thing that maybe you never dreamed that would actually come to fruition.
Um, I'll give you one that doesn't really answer that question, but one of the moments that was most resonating for me was 2019 draft, where we were all in the bathroom and the draftees were so nervous, and we ended up praying together in the bathroom. That was really cute. And that's
Oh,
not a moment we need to capture. That's not a moment we need to go on and talk about. But it was such a special moment because it was so vulnerable. And those nerves are real. That transition is real. So that was one of them. One of the other moments, again, these aren't necessarily pinch me moments, these are just special moments that resonated with me. Crowning Angel after LSU's championship win. That was such an organic moment that wasn't for content. Shout out to my employer, they got it on, on camera. But like that was just a special moment because I known what the ridicule she was going to face and has been facing. That was cool. I loved when I was hosting Asia Wilson's book tour, and we were in Miami. And like a couple days prior, I was like, "This is the last stop. Let's just do something special for Asia." And so I contacted like a couple of her close friends and a few players to like give me, and I opened it up to the public to give me videos. She had no idea, and I edited them all together for like a tribute video to her. And my favorite thing is like making Asia cry. I don't know why. It's just like it just happens. And so like that was special, and she hadn't cried. Yes, she hadn't cried at the other stops, and so I just thought that was really cool, like for her to just receive her flowers, because I do think that she's able to show up and give 100% to everybody all the time. And we have similar schedules, and I can't imagine being her and having that expectation from me every single time and providing people with good experiences like that. So those are some cool experiences. But I've been able to witness like in 2017 and 2018, like the buzzer beaters. That was cool. Like I've been able to, even this last WNBA finals, that was a pinch me moment, because I'm looking like I'm holding it together, but then I look at Spoon and I'm like, dang, this is your moment. I remember us filming Unfinished Business, the documentary, and them wanting so badly for it to be finished business, and talking to JJ, I'm like, you've been right there all those times, 5 times. Like, is it gonna close out? And so for us to see them do finished business was a pinch me moment. I was like, dang, JJ, look how poetic is that your first championship is with you with Finals MVP in New York, in the best place to have a tour like that. Or Spoon, like if you would have been still coaching, you wouldn't be able to experience this in the way that you did. And so everything works out for a reason. So all those poetic moments.
I one of my favorite moments from the parade was at the very beginning, before it started, before I got onto Broadway. I went up to the float that had all the Liberty Legends and Maddie on it, and I just said thank you to a couple of those players that I remember watching as a kid. And
Mm-hmm.
to see Spoon and Crystal Robinson. I mean, there were a whole bunch of players that were on those floats,
Kim
but
just got over double knee surgery, girl. Sit
yeah,
down.
oh my God. With the walker, and she was not stopping for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but just to be able to have that small moment to and yeah, that things work in their own ways. Things work out, and for Teaspoon to be able to get that moment, I'm shocked you just didn't say meeting Ja Rule on your moment.
So here's a fun fact. I am a little fraud. I've known Ja for a few years now. We actually met at a party. And I was like, I don't know if y'all know this about me, but I'm not I don't fangirl over anything, because I think that everything's accessible, which is a privilege to say. But anyway, but I was like, I'm gonna maintain this fandom for Ja. I have not met him ever. So when I first met him, I literally, it was like, I have to make this a scene. So I walked up to him, and I screamed in his face. I was like, ah! He was like, how about we just have a drink? And I was like, okay. So, and then like, I was just with him a couple months ago. So like, I know him. I'm very familiar with him. He was the one who was like, Ari. And I was like, oh, what's up? But like, it's just a fun inside joke between me and all y'all about Ja Rule, and he's in on it. And so I think it's really funny.
Before we get you out of here, I have to ask you about what was not women's sports related, but something that you did this past year, which was the work that you did with the American Kennel Club, the dog diving, because
Mhm.
that you had tweeted it into existence that you
Mhm.
wanted to be sideline. I don't know if it's called sideline for,
It's called
uh,
sideline, and that's what I was hired to do.
and you got to toss whatever it is, the frisbee or whatever, for these dogs to dive off of the diving board. What was that experience like for you, and what were some unique challenges
Okay.
in that scenario?
See how I perk up? You think I love women's sports? Dogs? Dogs? No. So for the first one I did two. I did dock diving, which is we did air retrieve and distance. So distance, think long jump, air retrieve, think high jump. It was a lot of learning because it's a completely new sport, and those are two different sports. And for the first time ever, they made all the dogs do both. And if you know anything about like track and field, a lot of long jumpers don't do high jump. I think like long and triple kind of translate better, but like these dogs are extreme athletes. It was so cute. It's very much like casual. I thought it was gonna be like very like bougie. Like it was not. We were in the middle of a field in Colorado, about 30 minutes from Denver. But the dogs take it very seriously. They're very excited. Their owners do this regularly. It's not only a social event, but it's like it's their thing. There are generations who are born into it. And then the next one I did was fly ball, which is like a 4x1, like a relay. They go down and back, and they have to pass each other. It's like a whole thing, drag racing style, because the countdown clock, it's nuts. There's so many penalties for that. But their dog sports are just as intricate as human sports, and the different skill sets of the dogs, like running and jumping, they get measured by when their butt touches the water, like their actual butt, not their tail or their nose. And so there's such strategy behind it. But again, I had a great play-by-play and a great analyst next to me to help me with sideline. They introduced me to a lot of the dog owners, like Susie Evans, my girl. She owns like one of the Colorado teams, and she's a hoot. She doesn't like to practice because she didn't like to reveal her secrets, like when they have the run throughs. And so it's the same type of thing as you would work human sports, but the dogs, they love you and they just hug you after.
I love that. That's my algorithm on TikTok is mostly dog videos, and every now and then I'll have these competitions come up, and I just love seeing how after these dogs do these elaborate runs that I would not be able to do, that like they end with jumping into their owner's arms, and then just their tails going crazy, and it's like not only are they very, very quick and very good at this, but they love all
At
of
the
this
end of the day,
doing.
Miles, people forget these are dogs. Like they have no idea that they're on ESPN. They're just trying to chase their toy into the pool. They're just trying to reach their toy up top. They just want to make their mama proud. So the second they get out of the pool, run and jump, tag whaling and things like that. And even if they fail, the owners are really good about it. It's not like a confirmation show, which confirmation shows are very different. They're like very much you march your dog around. This is a dog sports situation, and so it was a lot more casual and a lot more love.
I don't know why that answer got me a little bit emotional, but I think that that's the right
Dogs are the best ever. We don't deserve dogs, Miles.
They are absolutely the best. Ari, thank you so much. We just, on the way out, wanted to give you your flowers because you've been so inspirational to us in this space. And I think so much of Twitter, whether it's media or players or fans, just I don't know how you have the hours in the day, but make us all feel so seen and appreciated. And I just wanted to let you know that that love is mutual and that we're just so happy to be able to call you a colleague and a friend in this space. And thank you for pulling up and taking the time to be with us today.
I want to tell you, Miles and Owen, that you all are doing the work, and I might be burnout. Like I understand burnout season, but every bit of your work is so necessary in this space. Ignore all the bells and whistles that come with everything. That I promise you, if you stay true to what y'all want to accomplish, the reward will come. People see a lot of other people's journeys and they don't realize what they've had to go through. So with you, embrace your journey, stay centered in your why. Don't wait for that confirmation from other people. Your work is necessary. I know that I can look to you all for your beat reporting, for your extra content. Like it's so useful to those of us who don't have the freedom that y'all have anymore. Like I don't have that freedom anymore. So I'm studying y'all to be more prepared for my job. So we all work together in this beautiful web, and I wouldn't be able to have the output that I have if it weren't for you all and other independent journalists. And so like keep going. The burnout is real, but also you cannot pour into things if you are depleted. So please, like if you learn nothing else from Monica McNutt, I'm telling you what she tells me every single day. Have you poured into you? So, and if you're waking up every single day and answering that as a no, or you don't know how to answer it, then you're doing it wrong. So pour into you so you can be able to sprinkle your magic over everyone.
Oh,
Perfect
thank you
dismount.
so much.
Thank you, Ari.
I got y'all.